The Freeman Report and James Freeman on today's News Talk, TNT.
Right, we're going to stick with these events in America because they are, like I keep on saying, astonishing. And, you know, I'm not bored of them yet. There's still a lot to discuss. And I'm eager to get as many opinions as I can in terms of what people think is actually going on. My next guest, Dr. John Laughland, he's the director of the Forum for Democracy International. Welcome to the Freeman Report, John.
Thank you, James.
So, John, what do you make of the events of the past 2 weeks from America?
Well, like everyone, I'm following them, and as you've just said, with absolute fascination, but also with a certain amount of horror, because we have two main candidates. One of them was nearly assassinated, and the other one seems to have been more or less pushed out in a very peculiar way. The American Constitution has procedures for removing a president from office, Article 25 of the Constitution, if he is incapacitated. And yet Joe Biden seems to have been effectively removed from office, not formally, of course, but effectively, by a kind of party coup. So we're looking at, as I say, one candidate being nearly assassinated and the other being the victim of what appears to be a sort of coup. And, you know, that's very troubling for a country which sets itself up as a model for everyone else and which is very proud of its constitutional procedures and so on, its democracy and all that. What we appear to be seeing is a sort of oligarchy, or if you want, the deep state, trying to regain control after the events of last week, when, of course, following the assassination on Trump, Trump's star was in the ascendant because, you know, the way he reacted, the way he got up, the photograph, the image and everything, you know, that was the Trumpian moment, or so it seemed. And now, a day or two later, the establishment in the form of the Democratic Party appears to be trying to retake control by putting in place somebody who was not on the ballot in the primaries. And this is a very important point. I'm sure your viewers understand this. The American system has a system of primaries. All over the United States, people in the Democratic Party, the Republican Party, vote in a first stage for who they want to be the candidate. And these primaries, they're not just internal party procedures. The exact legal status varies from state to state, but in a number of states, they are formal state procedures. They are public procedures. They're not private. It's not like the election of the Conservative Party or the Labour Party in Britain. It's part of the process of electing the president. Now, Kamala Harris was obviously not on the ballot because it was Joe Biden. And now this idea that she can be shooed in and that the delegates, the people who were elected in the primaries, the delegates, the idea that they can say, well, in fact, we don't want Biden, we want Kamala, is, I'm pretty sure, I mean, I'm not an expert, but I'm pretty sure illegal in more than one state. Illegal because the delegates, much as for the Electoral College itself, when the president himself is elected, they're not free to say who they want to be the candidate. They have been elected to vote for the candidate that they were elected to vote for. So basically, it's at best a sort of oligarchical takeover, and at worst, as I say, a sort of coup.
Yeah, I mean, many are questioning whether this, if Kamala gets in, it'll be Obama's fourth term. Because I think, because I mean, look, anybody who's astute and actually follows the news cycle and actually really looks beyond the headlines must have been asking who is running the country over the past sort of 12, 18 months, because it's been clear that it's not Biden, isn't it?
Absolutely. And I'm glad you mentioned that, because I've concentrated on the events of the last few days in what I've just said. But yes, the general problem is much bigger. Joe Biden has seemed to be incapacitated now for a while. It was only, as it were, noticed when there was the CNN debate with Trump a couple of weeks ago now. But I mean, everyone who was on social networks knew perfectly well that he was incapacitated. That itself is a scandal, because obviously it means that there is a cabal in the White House. I've used the word deep state already. You can call it whatever you like. You can call it the establishment if you want, to be slightly less polemical. But someone he must be running the show, and it doesn't seem to be him. And that's why I use the word coup, because there are people, I absolutely can't say whether it's true or not, but there are those who speculate that he was pushed into signing this letter without really even perhaps realizing what he was doing. He certainly hasn't made any statement, as you know. That again is very peculiar. When L.B. Johnson resigned from the candidacy back in the late 60s, he went on television. He made an address, you know, my fellow Americans and so on. Biden has hardly been seen for the last week. So yes, the whole situation is deeply troubling, because obviously we live in very troubled times, and we want to think that the most powerful country in the world, or at least the country which says it's the most powerful, is actually, you know, that somebody is in control, and frankly we don't know who.
Yeah, exactly. And when you put it like that, it is very unusual, isn't it? That I mean, it's very, very convenient, of course, that he's got COVID. I think there's big question marks there. The timing of it, the fact that COVID isn't really a thing anymore. It's very, very peculiar, the whole thing. But of course, that provides cover, doesn't it, for the fact that he hasn't gone on TV and announced it formally to the American public. But the fact that he's been governing the country, it's quite astonishing that he just puts a post. Well, I think most people realize it's not Biden that's done that. He wouldn't even be able to remember the password, I should imagine, for his ex account. But somebody's put that out there. It's quite astonishing. Now, John, what do you think of Kamala? What do you think she stands any chance at all against Trump?
Well, before I answer that, I just want to say that, yes, it's troubling, but it's particularly troubling in the context of American politics as it's been now since 2016, in which, as everybody knows, Trump embodies, as it were, a sort of populist rebellion against the establishment. And we all know that the 2020 election was contested. We know that the Trump supporters think that it was stolen and so on. So there's a very febrile atmosphere in America, where precisely the suggestion that an establishment could be regaining control in the face of a popular or populist revolt, or at least an election, is obviously only going to add to the instability. Well, you asked about Kamala. I mean, I think she's absolutely terrible. I think she is a very mediocre person, very inarticulate, very inexperienced. I mean, there have been many inarticulate presidents before. I think one thinks of George W. Bush. But even he, who was absolutely terrible, had some kind of substance. One may not have liked it, but he nonetheless was a person. She seems to be, I'm sorry to say this, and I'm not trying to be gratuitously rude, but she seems to be a person who was put there as a token, you know, woman of color.
Yeah.
Very much. You mentioned Obama just now. It's very much in the, obviously Obama was black. It's very much in the Obama mode, you know, political correctness and so on. She was put there. I mean, Biden isn't much better, but she seems to be even less substantial than him. So my opinion of her is extremely low.
Yeah. So John, given that, do you think there is any way now that, because of course it's not decided yet, she hasn't actually got the nomination, although she seems to be being coronated. Do you think there's any way that the Democrats and this establishment, the cabal, whatever you want to call it, could actually put someone else up at this point now? Do you think that's possible, or do you think that would just look so bad because of the fact that even though she's unpopular, and I was looking at her approval ratings yesterday, she's got I think a minus 20 or something like that percentage point overall approval rating. She's got a minus 10 percentage point approval rating amongst women, which has got to be worrying, I think, for the Democrats. So, you know, I think, you know, all of the kind of arrows are pointing towards they should change her. But is it possible for them to do that, do you think?
Well, it's interesting you say that, because I have seen the opposite, but I didn't believe it when I saw the opposite. I've seen claims in The Guardian, for instance, that all the polls are in her favor, and the left in America is delighted, and all the rest of it. I didn't believe it. So the polls you've seen may well be accurate. Your question is one I can't really answer because of the thing I said a moment ago about the primaries. I believe that in at least 2 states, it's not possible now to change the candidate from Biden, never mind from Kamala to someone else. So unless Biden is formally removed, unless he either dies or is removed by this Article 25 procedure, in other words, declared unfit. So is it possible? I must admit, I didn't expect them to put Kamala. I thought they would put Michelle Obama instead. Maybe they've chosen Kamala precisely for these technical reasons, apart from the tokenism, the fact that, as vice president, she can sort of be a shoo-in and get the donations and all the rest of it that have already accrued to Biden. I don't know whether technically it's possible to organize new primaries. I doubt that it's possible legally to have a different candidate at this stage without new primaries. The whole thing to me seems to be a mess. But my fear is that she will be shooed in, and they will finesse it in one way or another. On the other hand, America is a very litigious country, and it would just need, one thing to go wrong. If she was, for example, not on the ballot in one state, that would itself be a major difficulty, because she would automatically lose 4 or 5 electoral college votes and so on. So it's difficult.
It is, isn't it? I mean, I wouldn't put any money on anything at the moment, because everything seems to be very frothy, I think, in American politics, and things change very, very quickly, unexpectedly as well. We've got about 3 minutes left, John, and I do want to talk about Vance Trump. Yep. Let's just work on the assumption that they get in and that Trump is the next president. What do you think that means for world geopolitics?
Well, broadly, I think it's good news, because I'm a very strong and vocal critic of American foreign policy. And while Trump leaves an awful lot to be desired, including in that area, his first mandate was a lot less bad, let's say that, a lot better than all his predecessors. He didn't launch any new wars. He expressed skepticism about foreign entanglements, foreign interventions, and so on. He did do a bombing raid in Syria, but that was about it. Biden has, of course, presided over the Ukraine war and the Israeli operation in Gaza. And Trump boasts that he will put an end to the Ukraine war. And if he does, then, of course, that will be good news. Vance as well has made, not all the time, these people have said different things at different times, but there are good things that he has said. So I would be cautiously optimistic. I don't think it could be any worse than the warmongers, the Clintons, the Obamas, the neocons, who are now largely in the Democratic Party, not only, of course, but very much in the Democratic Party. I think that Trump's victory, if indeed, and I think you're right, I think he may well win. If we assume it's Kamala, I think he has a good chance. Then I would be cautiously optimistic. He made a lot of mistakes in the first term with his appointments. Let's hope he's learned from those mistakes.
Yeah, absolutely. Let's hope that he's learned from those mistakes. I mean, the only thing that worries me with Vance, I think, is this plan to put Ukraine to bed, that proxy war there. It seems to be because actually there's a wider plan now to pivot to China, which I think is worrying because, Russia is one thing, China is a whole other beast, isn't it?
Yeah, but their room for maneuver is very limited with China. It's very limited militarily with Russia. They've tried, obviously, to defeat Russia in Ukraine by arming Ukraine and giving shed loads of money to Ukraine. It hasn't really been a success, to put it mildly. But China is a whole new proposition economically. We all know that it's the biggest economy in the world. And China is, of course, also non-negligible militarily. I don't know whether they're planning a military conflict.
It certainly is. And John, I'm sorry we have run out of time. You'll have to come back on the Freeman Report again. Thank you so much for joining me today. Dr. John Laughland is the director of the Forum for Democracy International. Thank you very much for joining me today, John.